Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Castle Keeper Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to be talking about Castles and Crusades Codex Germania. So this is part of the Codex Historical Mythologies series that I will be doing for Castles and Crusades. And so I was going to do one video for each of them that I do own at this time. Some of them I have a PDF for, most I do not. And so that's why sometimes the presentations of these videos is going to be a little bit different. I happen to have the PDF for this particular codex, and that's because it was part of the recent the Kobold Press Humble Bundle and Friends. So it was Kobold Press plus a number of other publishers all combined up into one big 52 PDF package, which I detailed in a previous video. And so this happened to be, its PDF happened to be in that bundle. So along with a bunch of other things from Castles and Crusades, and I will talk about those as a separate video when I talk about that bundle and what I actually got in there specifically for Castles and Crusades. And then I'll move on to other videos for those other projects as well, or products, I should say, as well. So here we have Codex Germania. It appears that all of these Codex, mythology series are written by Brian N. Young. Uh, from what I understand, Mr. Young is either a PhD in history, or he's a candidate for PhD, in history. So certainly has the expertise to write these things. And when I start going through the actual PDF, you're going to see what I'm really talking about here. So let's go to very briefly to so this is the book I am talking about today. You can see right behind me, right past my white box there, is my Castles and Crusades collection. And I would say a few months ago, I made the decision that once my AD&D first edition campaign is over, I will try to transition my entire group of players. We've been together now for over 78 weeks, and some of us even longer than that. A couple of us have actually been they've been playing in my various Dungeons and Dragons campaigns for about 6 months prior to that as well. So we're well over the 2 year mark with at least two of my players. And I want to bring them over to Castles and Crusades, and we will then continue our fantasy RPG playing with Castles and Crusades moving forward. So I will eventually move from AD&D First Edition to this, which is really a natural evolution, I believe, and it's been often described as a natural evolution for advanced Dungeons and Dragons is Castles and Crusades. So we're really looking forward to doing that. I'm looking to create a little side campaign for now, while my AD&D campaign is still running, to just become much more familiar with the system and start to integrate some of these codex materials into games and see how it works out. So it will be a good training exercise, for myself as a castle keeper to learn the system by running it, and then expand the um, the scope of my Castles and Crusades campaign by adding more materials into it and adding more players to that group there. So, without further ado, let's jump right into this. And I am going to switch over and I will expand this so you can see more clearly what we're talking about. So here we go, and the cover art is by Peter Bradley. Interior art by Peter Bradley and Jason Walton. And I'm pointing that out because I want to really focus on, and I'm going to do a series of short videos talking about art of tabletop role playing games. So from my collection, various pieces of art throughout, the last 40 years or so of my playing, and showing the artwork that can be found in a lot of those things. So I do want to, just point that out. And this is produced by the Chenault Brothers, Trollord Games. As you can see, 2016 for this particular codex. And we go into the table of contents, and we have the German heroic age, gods and giants. Then we go into the two Germanias, continental Europe, and you're going to see that this is really front loaded with a lot of real world history and culture and folklore and then mythology. So all of that is really is just taken from the real world, and then once we get to chapter 3 and so on and so forth, then you get to the gamification of the mythology and lore of Germania. So let's jump right into that. So here is the Codex Germania, is the next among many that will detail the mythologies and cultures of many of the world's peoples uh, from a gaming context. Okay, so and that's what the whole thrust of these codex book supplements is a taking real world mythologies and culture and folklore and gamifying it, as I suggested earlier. So here we go, and you can see the artwork. I really do love the art style of Castles and Crusades. It's a little bit different from old school TSR, and certainly a lot different than some others. So it really is an art style that I think is uniquely Castles and Crusades. Like once you become familiar with it and you start seeing this kind of art, it's Castles and Crusades. And so I really do enjoy the art style of this, of this entire game system and all of its supplements as well. So we're just scrolling through. So early history of early Germania, and we have some nice historical maps, and you can kind of see um, they'll go through the Proto-Germanic before 100 BC, which is all the very, very dark, and then so on and so forth. Now, I might be displaying this in, well, this is just in black and white, so it might be a little bit harder to see it um, as clearly as it could be. So, origin of the Goths. All right, a time period of invasions. We start talking about the Roman Empire, and then its eventual collapse, the German heroic age. According to outside sources, Greek and Roman primarily, and surviving documents, the many Germanic people have long since considered themselves descended from from either Ermin, Ingve, or Estevi, the sons of Tuisto, a mysterious father god figure from the earliest prehistory. So again, still building into their folklore and such. We get into Anglo-Saxon, so the Angles and the Saxons, and so forth. Gods and giants, the three sons and their tribes. Again, still all of this is just foundation for what is later going to be gamified. And so we're already 16 or so pages in. And then we're still chapter 2. We're still talking about history and folklore and mythology. The Gothic kingdoms of the 5th and 6th centuries. Here you can see a much clearer map now. And then let's get to the game portions of this. So we're still into chapter 2. And that's a cool picture, right? And this is really my first in-depth flip through of the book. Um, so yeah, definitely a troll under the bridge gives you a different different idea of what that actually is when you see the size difference here. So that's pretty cool. So beasts and monsters dwelled in this location. I just got a little alert. I got to take care of something, but I will scroll through as I do this as well, multitasking. So an alp is a type of elf, vampiric in nature, and the cause of terrible nightmares in its victims. Typically, an alp is a male creature and is drawn to females to terrorize and feed on, while the Mara is the female half. Their beauty is illusionary to hide their truly hideous nature. All right, so kind of like an elven vampire, which is pretty cool, actually. So definitely something that would be interesting to use and encounter. A lot of times, so here we have, and I've explained this in with the Castles and Crusades system before. So you'll see here, like HD is 3d6. All right, so its hit die is the 3, and then the type of die really depends on the type of creature. They could be d6s, d8s, d10s, d12s, or d4s for fairly minor creatures. So it's not always the number of hit die that indicates the power of the creature. It's the type of hit die that they have as well. So that's really pretty a pretty unique system. I think I haven't encountered that in other fantasy role playing games or in general in any other role playing game. I haven't seen the a variation of the type of die of hit die in other systems. So that's something that's fairly unique here. Um, Most of these creatures that come out of the codexes, you will also might start to realize as you go through my video catalog of these things, is that creatures coming out of the codex do a lot of damage. They are, even if they don't have a lot of hit points based on their hit die, a lot of times their attacks just lay out a tremendous amount of damage. I mean, a bite doing 2d8 damage, so 2 to 16 for a bite, 1d10 for its claws. These are massively, a massive amount of damage being done for these kinds of natural attacks. So this kind of a creature, even encountered in just one or two, and probably more typically one, one being encountered, could cause, quite a bit of challenge for even a party of uh, characters because their special abilities, such as nightmares and vampirism, shapeshifting, and invisibility, will just make it where they're a much more um, um, challenging foe because they're deceptive and they're oftentimes hidden and such. So yeah, I will make notes of this every once in a while just to show the kind of damage that they do deal out. Details their special abilities. Um, so here we go. We'll keep on going through. A type of dwarf creature here, just 2d6. You can see not a lot of damage being done here as far as its weaponry is concerned. I did notice flipping through this earlier. Um, I wanted to take a look at Barghest. So Barghest, what you see in a lot of other video games, like these are, found in Lord of the Rings Online and others as well. But I'm fairly certain they're getting pulled out of Germanic folklore and mythology. Look at the attack damage on this thing here. All right. So first of all, it has 3 hit dice, but it's 3d10 hit die. All right. Secondly, its claw attacks do 2d8, so 2 to 16. Its bite does 3 to 30 points of damage. All right. Easily, a bite could kill a first level character, um, and probably deal a good amount of lethal damage to even second or third level characters. So this is a very severe challenge for low level characters. And then their number of encountered is between 1 and 4. So these are no joke. And again, with these mythological creatures coming out of these codex in particular, they do tend to deal a lot more damage. So initially, I shouldn't say initially. A few hours ago, I came across a comment on Twitter specifically for talking about Castles and Crusades, and it was like, listen, I'm looking to introduce some new players to Castles and Crusades. They're coming over from 5th edition, and what is something that I should let them know about so that they can better understand the system and acclimate to the game much easier. And the system itself is simple. In comparison to 5e, it's not very complex. It's pretty straightforward. It has more flexibility in it, um, but the lethality of combat is just something that you will have to inform new players or those players coming from 5e, for example, that combat in this game is going to be very, very much different than what they might have experienced in 5e, especially if the castle keeper, which is the dungeon master basically, the castle keeper is utilizing the critical hits and critical fumbles table that's in this game as well, which I absolutely love. That is something that new players to this game system are going to have to be informed of. Is that combat is much different. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So we're going to go through now. I know when I was flipping through. So let's take a look at dragons. And dragons, a lot of times they're going to pull from the Monsters and Treasures book for more detail. But here you can see attacks once again, 2 claws doing d8, wings do d10, tail does d10, and a bite does 4d10. So lots and lots of bite power to it, and then breath weapons and such, as you're probably familiar with dragons. I was going to mention something that I saw here that really stood out. These are essentially Germanic hill giants, Otin, and 9d8. And you can see when they're wielding a weapon, 3d8 for weapon damage when they're wielding weapons, or 2 fists for 1d8 damage. I wanted to show. I'm just not that familiar with it, so I'm going to, put that out there for any others that that have. So kobolds. So kobolds here. The kobold characterized a large population of unusually small folk throughout Midgard. The, the many varied and myriad forms of kobolds range from monstrous and sinister to gentle and fair, unlike the standard fantasy role playing version. The Germanic kobold is neither a reptile being nor outwardly evil in nature. They are a very different brand of fairy altogether. Ultimately, there are three categories of kobold in the seven worlds: domestic, subterranean, and nautical. The kobold is already listed under Kobluta, whatever, Codex Nordica, which will, while the domestic race appear like proportionately small humans standing 3 feet tall. Domestic kobolds assist a family of their choice with chores and maintenance around the home. The small gnome like folk in Cologne, I'm not going to try to pronounce German words, are part of the group of beings, good intentioned and modest. So here we have like a variety of different types of kobolds which fall into it. And as they point out, very different than what you were potentially encountering. That was weird. What you were potentially encountering in what you're potentially encountering from Dungeons and Dragons, let's say. And I believe the book, and that this is one thing that I'm noticing as I'm flipping through here, that the book has more art than the PDF. All right, so I want to show you that the book has more art, and let's get to Kobold in the book, and I am going to switch from this because that's what made it stand out for me. So let me show you this here. Let's switch views, and I'll go to full screen here. So here you can see, um, there you can see is what the kobold looks like. It's like a little gnome with a burning candle on his head. If you've played World of Warcraft, um, that's how kobolds are depicted. Actually, they have these little burning candles on their heads when you go into a kobold lair. So quite oddly, the World of Warcraft is using a much more Germanic, a dramatic depiction of kobolds rather than what you see in Dungeons and Dragons. Let's say. I just realized that the book itself, the hardcover book, has more images, more pictures than the codex itself, the PDF version. All right, so I am going to continue down, and anytime I come across something that needs that showing of it, I will switch over and show. So let's see, show troll. So at least we have a picture of a troll here. So there are 6d8 hit die creatures, or 8d8, depending on, I guess you could have two different sizes. You could have small versus large. And they don't do very much damage with their claws. Their bite does 2d6. That's fairly decent. And their weapon does weapon type +3. They can regenerate just like anything else. Fairly low intelligence, chaotic neutral, or chaotic evil. Let's see what the differentiation is between whether they're 6 or 8 hit die. The small and fairer trolls are non confrontational, but the large aggressive varieties have no issue with doing so. Yeah, so that's just a difference. The small ones are 68 and the large ones are 88. All right, let's see what else we have here. Flipping through, we're going into a section on dragons, a little bit more. The complexity of the Germanic dragon. Um, yeah, so there's a variation or just more complexity for nature of dragon's affliction. Unless the dragon is in the campaign or adventure is simply a monster inhabiting a poisonous lair, as in Beowulf, this is a system to form the basis to justify a monster's origin. Something drove the man or woman to be twisted and deformed state of becoming a dragon. Oh, so that's really interesting. So that's not something I was expecting to read about. This transformation might have taken days, weeks, months, or even years, but it warped and altered the person in question very destructively. And then you can roll a d8 to see actually led to uh, what actually led to the human becoming this kind of a thing. So you have greed, hate, scorned love, rival, wizardry, family curse, cursed tomb, divine curse. Dragon weaknesses is destiny, elemental weaknesses, a weak spot, magic, destined slayer, specific weapon weaknesses, powers. So acid breath, barbed spikes, fire form, and totem meister. Let's see, the cursed spirit of the dragon can summon from graves up to 2d10 undead to aid in its time, um, aid it in any time. The nature of these undead depends on the castle keeper and the scope of the campaign and its experience level. All right. Shape shifting, so dragons could shapeshift. At least certain dragons might. Reptile master, iron scales, spectral. Naming the dragon. So here you can create like fairly unique, obviously unique dragons, and and give them the the personalities and the history, like the lore and the background of these unique dragons. So that's really cool. Now, with all of these codexes, they do have variants on either character classes. So here we have Dark Witches, which is based on intelligence. Um, Sometimes you have differences in magic, whether it be different types of spells that they have available to them. So you're going to get a Germanic witch here, which will be different than other cultures, and so really cool. The fact that with each of these cultural books, they're going to have modifications to either character classes or spells or the components of casting spells, as we can see runic secrets, uh, Wodenic runes. The Rune Master is a wisdom based character class, and we go on through how runes work. Divination, d6 slot cast by the glory twigs. Oh, this is when you throw the sticks on the ground to read them, and this is what you can read off to the players when someone is trying to read these signs. Really cool artwork. And like I said, there's actually even less art in this PDF than there is in the hardcover books. So let's see. So this is Germanic religiosity. Religiosity. Sorry. um, I know they talk about paganism in this as well. Ring oaths. All right, so to serve the gods and many other gods and goddesses. And so we will get into. Now, a lot of times, what these will do is these will cross over into the other. Into other cultural gods. They shared, oftentimes they shared gods. They just named them differently. Um, and other times their gods are unique to their culture. So here we go. Funeral practices, soothsaying, just so much detail. I mean, there's just a lot here. As you can see, we're 85 pages in and still just giving more and more detail, more additional layers to it. And each of these codexes, there's about 6 or 7 of them at this point. Just keep on fleshing out more and more. So I'm really looking forward to digging into the others. Um, Battlecraft. So they always talk about combat and how combat is affected by, um, the mythology and the lore and the cultural practices of these other groups. So they might have different types of weapon damage or different types of weapons altogether, different types of tactics that they use based on their cultural differences. So really cool stuff. So here's another. Um, is this a class? This might be a class here. The Dragon Slayer. All right, so the Dragon Slayer class, dexterity based. And here we go. So here's the Dragon Slayers. Balder Strike, Dragon Dancing, Dragon Smith, and Worm Sense. And I'm fairly certain. So the Castle Keeper info, Germanic Society. So if you were creating your own world, and you wanted to create a Germanic society within it, then this will allow you to incorporate that. And there should be, I know they do the naming section here. We're probably coming close to the end. Yes. Um, the sagas as an example. I mean, look at, I mean, that's amazing. What an amazing image that is. You see the size difference. It's probably a Titan of some kind. And here's an adventure, right? So we have the Monster of the Fens, introduction, various hooks, and so on, which I believe all of the codex uh, have adventures thrown in them as well. And so there you have it. I mean, it's so what lies within: new classes, new spells, and more monsters. So bring the Germanic world to the table. So I'm going to switch over here and come back out to here. So there's a real quick look through the Codex Germania. Uh, really, really impressed with these. Every one of them adds new challenges, great, great historical work on actually capturing the culture and the lore and the mythology in one you know very thin but just packed with information. There's great gamification of it. There's great, always new character classes. Generally speaking, new magic items, certainly new spells or different ways of delivering spells, and and then always like a short adventure or plot hooks and such as well, or adventure hooks in there as well. So you know, absolutely well worth picking these up if you're if you're looking to delve even deeper into Castles and Crusades and add more and more to your table for your players to experience Castles and Crusades in its fullness. And games is always having various sales. They sell these books here in both hardcover and PDF, or you could combine them combined up. Uh, they give veterans a military discount if you're fortunate enough to be a veteran or someone currently serving, and then the game system itself is just so it's so dynamic and just such an easy system to pick up, and it's a challenging system for your players to they have to think, and they have to have a very good fight versus flight response in this game, because some of these mythological creatures do pack a real big punch, which I hope I impressed upon you as I was going through this book again. And there's just a lot of surprises in that Troll Lord Games really does throw this. I've been playing role playing games for over 40 years, and I'm very, very familiar with a number of systems out there. And every time I dig a little bit deeper into Castles and Crusades, they keep on surprising me with something else that I just wasn't expecting. And so that's something that I think is really uh, a great selling point for Castles and Crusades. If you are looking to pick up other alternatives to Dungeons and Dragons for your fantasy tabletop role playing games, this is certainly one that I think that you should take a look at. Whether it's through these codexes or just the core three books of Castles and Crusades, you won't regret it. It's just so well done, the game system, that I encourage you to give it a try and take a look at it. So I hope you liked this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. The channel is doing very, very well these last couple of weeks as far as growth. And with that growth, it means that the algorithm will take it and spread it out even further. Leave your questions and comments in the questions and comments section. I usually have a fairly quick turnaround to get back to your comments if you have any questions, or you want me to take a look at um, other things, as well as I'm going through my normal cycle of pulling things from my shelf that I haven't spoken about yet. So if there's anything that you want me to take a look at, please feel free to put that in the comments section, and I will get back to it as soon as I can. And I've been fairly good with responding to those kinds of things. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. And you all have a great rest of your evening. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday, so a lot of people are probably watching the Super Bowl, and but by the time this thing uploads, it'll be well past the game is over. So maybe some of you will check it out in your late night, or it'll be in place certainly by tomorrow morning. So you all have a great evening. Take care.